Привет, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Happy birthday to Jarvis Tyner from the CP USA. I was supposed to go to his birthday party, but I wish I had a good excuse, but I don't. At around, I think, 3 o'clock, I started reading a book about the Ustazi so I can finish part 2 of Victims of Communism. And then I forgot. So it is not, I feel kind of embarrassed that I forgot your 80th birthday because I was reading about these horrific Croatian Nazis. But that's the truth. What am I supposed to do? And I have my shirt on backwards. Oh, shucks. I do. It's one of those days, right? I don't know what else to say besides c'est la vie. Can you hear me at least? Well, let's see. I'm going to dedicate this month to doing an expose on all the victims of communism from the Victims of Communism Memorial. We already got part 1 out with Roman Shukhievich. And so read it, please donate, subscribe. And so today we have Tara Reade. We talk a little bit about Cuomo and all that stuff. And then we end up reading about 3/4 of a piece, but then I will come back and read the rest live, and I won't explain anything. That way you won't get confused. And then I finally got an early Christmas, or is it an early Christmas present? I don't even know what this is. And I'm going to read from this week. Good news is I have lots of energy. Bad news is I can't believe I forgot Jarvis's birthday, and I only, because I was busy reading about Croatian Nazis. Anyways, happy birthday to him, and I feel so bad. And sorry for the delay. That I kind of, so what happened was that I had brought long story camera, but then I forgot to charge my camera, so I'm back using my phone. But hopefully by the time I come back, the camera will be charged, and then I can use the camera. Today we have Tara Reade, who is a journalist, a podcaster, and now an author on our show to discuss many things that need to be discussed.
Not a journalist.
Sorry. Yeah, you write for RT. That makes you a journalist.
I'm just a writer, but I'm not a journalist.
I think that's a journal.
Okay.
You're a journalist.
Yeah. I'm an author, writer, podcast host.
Yeah.
I don't want to claim journalism because I don't have the training, and I don't do that.
People with training really sucks, as we can tell with Chris Cuomo. Okay. So today it seems like our Attorney General Letitia James has come out with some kind of preliminary report. And so for those who are not familiar, last year, Cuomo's brother, our governor, Andrew Cuomo, was involved in a lot of allegations. So it's more than allegations, of course. It started with Lindsey Boylan, and then there was retaliation and cover-ups and so on. And it got to the point where I think he was the sacrificial lamb. And so he resigned. And the Attorney General continued to investigate, if you can call it that. And
But it was a pretty thorough investigation, and now it's leading to a DOJ probe.
Allegedly, yes.
He did a good job, and I don't think Cuomo was a sacrificial lamb at all.
You don't?
I think that who they tried to make the sacrificial lamb was Lindsey Boylan and the other survivors.
No.
Severe pattern of sexual misconduct with his own staff.
I know that. What I'm saying is that, like, everyone else, like, okay, so Trump, Joe Biden, all these senators, like, they all do the same thing, and none of them faced any consequences.
Right,
Why did Cuomo?
And well, there was a real battle with the elites because Andrew Cuomo tried to replace Joe Biden on the 2020 ticket. So I'm sure, normally where they would cover up those sexual misconduct, it was able to get forth, I think, because the Democratic elites were ready to throw him under the bus, in particular because of the 15,000 people that were affected by his policies around COVID and how he covered up the deaths of older, people in the nursing homes, and several thousand people died as a result of his policies. However, even with all of that, there was still a lot of mainstream press was suppressing it. And this report, this criminal, which is basically an investigative report done by the Attorney General, exposed text messages, emails, communications that were done by the top Cuomo leadership to cover up the sexual misconduct and also to go after the survivors.
I actually have one comment or question or like the situation, because I remember when you came out in 2019 or 2020
and then 2020.
The New York Times, like, it was not the same kind of thing as Christine Blasey
Dr. Ford.
Yeah, the New York Times did write in April when it was a little too late. They kind of wrote something, but most of it was just a hit piece against you.
For target practice.
Exactly, a hit piece against you.
Yeah, I mean, they just did hit piece after hit piece after hit piece. That's what they were trying to do with Lindsey Boylan. But Ronan Farrow came out with his reporting, and then 12 hours later, Cuomo resigned.
Yeah, Ronan Farrow was very good with that.
He is always very good with that. He's amazing, and he's exposed a lot of systemic rape culture, power structures in the U.S., regardless of political party. He's gone after Republicans and Democrats alike, and he exposed NBC. He exposed the way the media is covering it, and he risked his profession to raise up the Weinstein stories. I mean, he had to leave NBC. He went after NBC, and so did Rich McHugh. Rich McHugh is another fantastic investigative reporter who went up against NBC. They killed, and Ronan Farrow's book is called Catch and Kill. They caught and killed the Weinstein story with the New York Times, and then with all of that. And Jodi Kantor also did reporting that was quite good. So there's individual investigative reporters trying to do their job, but you have corporate interests and these super predators that have a lot of power and resources that are suppressing the information, like Chris Cuomo did by trying to help his brother.
Okay, so this is like a good one. Chris Cuomo is allegedly, okay, so recent reports say Chris Cuomo is on suspension indefinitely from CNN for his conduct. But so he's a journalist allegedly, and he should not be advised. I mean, if you are going to be a campaign advisor, you can be a campaign advisor, but you should recuse yourself from anything involving your brother. You shouldn't report on your brother. You shouldn't interview your brother in like a creepy way, like all of which he did. So,
right. Yeah.
So do you want to talk about, so he was involved in a strategy call. What was he saying, and how is that pertinent to you?
Well, it was more than one call. He was actually using because, being an anchor at CNN in that powerful position, he had access to quite a Rolodex. He was using his position to suppress the stories, and also same tactics, talking to them about basically shaming the victims or discrediting the survivors. using, tactics to do it. And it's wrong. And CNN actually knew about this, but it wasn't until the criminal report has been made public that now CNN suspended, and I think under pressure. So he has now been suspended. Cuomo has resigned. He should have been impeached, in my opinion. And also, in my opinion, he should have criminal charges. There was something about Cuomo being charged with one thing, and then I don't know, it disappeared off the media. But now, just as we're talking, another article dropped from The Hill talking about the DOJ has opened a criminal investigation now. I believe that, I would assume that's criminal, not civil. It's a criminal investigation into Cuomo. And, I'm hoping that there will be Andrew Cuomo face consequences.
But do you mean Andrew Cuomo or Chris Cuomo?
No, Andrew Cuomo, I think they've opened the DOJ probe into. As far as Chris Cuomo, he's experienced, his censure by being suspended from CNN. But look what happened to Tubin or some of these other bad actors.
And they're all back.
Wait it out and they come back.
Yeah. And what about, what's his name? The guy who lied about the bombs in Iraq. Brian Williams.
Yeah, Brian Williams.
That was the only lie. He's repeatedly lies, and he's and that's what I notice is that if they are a attack dog for the Lenin talks a lot about this too later, but if they're attack dogs for the powerful, there's literally no consequences to being wrong. No one is going to get fired if we're saying Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. But if you're Phil Donahue and said, maybe not, you're going to get fired. And this is the same exact phenomenon we are seeing. So how did Chris Cuomo, this kind of feels like not a behind the scenes, but a watch out strategy thing. What did he say about discrediting Lindsay and how to use your case?
Well, I think, the AG report is almost, it's hundreds of pages long. And so you can read about it yourself and look at all the exhibits. But basically, I think there was an article that just got printed about my case, about how they discussed among themselves. This was about leadership. Chris Cuomo wasn't in that particular thread, but they were discussing how to victim shame Lindsey Boylan and to use Biden's, basically his tactics, how his campaign silenced me and discredited me. And so that's just been made public. Most media is not covering it. This report's been out for a little while, and mainstream media, corporate media is not lifting that. They're not even covering it really. And it's again, the systemic silencing to protect predators. And so right now the Biden protection program is kicking in. And, all of this swirls around Time's Up as well.
Yes. Okay. That's what I wanted to get with this. So Time's Up was a non-profit, whatever.
Correct.
But then who is, are you familiar with Anita Dunn?
Yes. And how I'm familiar with Anita Dunn is she was the former White House advisor. She just had to step down because she's also the founder of Time's Up, which was supposed to provide legal counsel through Time's Up Legal Defense Fund, part of National Women's Law Center. And it was supposed to help with that and also public relations. She is the president and co-owner of SKD Knickerbocker. And that public relations firm also represented Joe Biden during his campaign. He paid her $2.2 million. And what came out in Ryan Grimm's investigative reporting was that I was seeking help from Time's Up, not knowing this. Meanwhile, they were extracting information about my case, and she was already working for Joe Biden. And during the 3-month period that I was trying to get their services, her payments exponentially went up, increased, and that's what Law and Crime exposed. They did not help me, but they did not tell me about the conflict of interest. And now a woman who is an activist named Allison Turcos has wrote a letter, like organized all of us that had been affected by Time's Up trying to access their services, wrote a letter that went public. And as a result, that exposed the corruption of Hillary Rosen, Anita Dunn, Tina Chen, and all of them resigned. And now Time's Up has been gutted. There's only 3 staff members left, and they're trying to reimagine it, apparently. But Shonda Rhimes, for instance, was on the board and one of the founders. She's resigned. They were basically it was discovered that they created this nonprofit as a catch and kill for the powerful elites. So they were protecting powerful men like Cuomo, like Biden, like Weinstein.
Wow. Yeah, that is like, that's kind of like a lot of human rights organizations in different ways, but this seems extra. There's like extra connected, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So on the okay, so just so people understand, with coming forward, people often wonder why women don't come forward. Like,
why? What
are the consequences for career?
Well, for me, the discrediting meant it ended my career. I was an expert witness on domestic violence. I can no longer do that. I was threatened with prison with 24 years for perjury. Even though I didn't commit perjury, there was like this campaign there was email and phone to the DA's office where I'd done expert witness work, and they were trying to convince them that I belonged to be locked up. That's the phrase they used, and then put all this pressure for them to look through anything I might have said. So they said I didn't tell the truth about my education, which isn't true, but I ended up having to hire lawyers, and it's, thousands of dollars to do so. And I got some help, but it's been horrifying. And my name was cleared. And then Ryan Grimm did another investigative report, and so did The Hill, and exposed that I never committed perjury. There was nothing there. But the goal was, it was right around the election time. They were trying to get me arrested and silenced by the election. And it's whistleblowers shouldn't have to face their reputation being discredited, being, smeared in the press, online. They shouldn't face death threats. We shouldn't have to do this. We should have more compassion in our humanity for one another. And it's startling. Like when I read last night, I read for the first time the transcript of the Cuomo staff, these elite people in the governor's office running the state of New York, discussing how to destroy someone's life just to protect Andrew Cuomo from his misdeeds. And it drives home. It's evil. It's beyond the pale. It's awful.
Yeah.
And these are the people we've elected, and these are the people that are working for these elected officials to help them hold on to power. So
at any cost.
And so it's destroying lives. Like I lost my income, I lost housing, I lost my reputation, as I said, and I'm rebuilding that. Mm-hmm. I write now for RT, for Russia Today, and I love writing the op-eds. I've been doing about one per week for about a year. And they were gracious enough to have me with a platform. So I have a new podcast called The Politics of Survival. Wonderful. And I'm trying to uplift other people's stories that have been suppressed and really bring awareness so that the person behind me doesn't have to suffer as I have, or as Lindsay Boylan has.
Yeah, I mean, and this is just the, I guess, tip of the iceberg. So for every one person that comes forward, there are probably 20, 30 that don't. So the problem is much bigger than we think. And I guess for me, it is the utter, it's not even the hypocrisy, but like, the depravity of the Democratic Party that drives me nuts. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I mean, yeah. And both parties are guilty of this, but Democrats, are using the Me Too and saying they protect women and saying one thing and doing another. And that's what's so startling and discouraging. And all I have to say is personally, I was most of my adult life, I was a Democrat. I am anti-imperialist. I tend to be on the left-hand side of left, but I won't vote Democrat ever again. And I'm not going to be scared into it. I will. I'm an independent now, and I think we need a third party. We don't need this duopoly, and we need to get rid of the oligarchs. The way the wealth disparity has gotten to the point where people are suffering so badly that it's not sustainable. Just like we need to do something about global climate change, we need to do something about the wealth disparity. And how that impacts sexual assault is you can't access resources. You can't, get lawyers and things like that.
Or it's even worse than that. Earlier this year, we interviewed this person who has been tracking Bill Gates throughout his career. But Bill Gates, along with Jeffrey Epstein, opened an orphanage high school in Haiti. And then there was quite a few allegations, and then they had to shut it down a few years later. So it literally, they can go buy themselves access to children or whatever. And
yeah. I mean, CIA just got exposed. There's an articles releasing today. I think BuzzFeed released the initial one where they have pedophiles working for them, and they've been caught using their position to with that. And it's horrible. It's
about
how people misuse power like that. That's disgusting.
Well, about General Dostum. He was one of the Northern Alliance that the U.S. put in power. He eventually rose to the position of VP. He was he was a serial rapist, but the one time he did get attention is when his people anally raped another governor. And then that made it to the front page news. But this is the good people that the U.S. government was supporting. He was the vice president. And this is not the only case. In all over Afghanistan, the rapiest people were put in charge. And I remember watching this case about this girl named Samia Gul. Her dad, the governor or somebody related high up, supported by the U.S., raped her. Her dad went to file cases, and he got sentenced to prison for filing false charges. And so it's I think they do it because, when you have kind of rapey people, they're easy blackmail material for capital. That's just my thought. What do you think?
It's a complicated issue, and it's systemic in American culture, unfortunately, because we're not addressing the core. We're empowering people that act in predatory ways instead of holding them accountable and investigating them properly. And until you do that, for instance, neither Donald Trump nor Joe Biden have been properly investigated for their deeds against women. And it's unconscionable. And they're just about power and money. And, and that brings me to this.
What about Clinton?
Why are our politicians millionaires? They're supposed to make $100,000 a year or $200,000. Why are they multimillionaires? And why are they holding on to seats for decades? This is not sustainable. And it was not meant, they want to talk about democracy all the time. That isn't democracy. It is not.
It is the rule by the worst. Well, since if you really want to know about how to get rid of the oligarchs, we need to learn from the best. And today, the article we picked out for Lenin is about the press and how little it has changed. And I thought you might like it.
Okay, cool.
You should also talk about your new book and where to buy it.
My book is called Left Out When the Truth Doesn't Fit In. And you can get it at tarareadeauthor.com. And you can listen to my podcast, The Politics of Survival, every other Friday. And right now, the episode that just released last Friday was with Amy Frank, who is a whistleblower, talking about the military mishandling of sexual assault cases and kind of what she's going through as a result of being a whistleblower. And she and I, in fact, tonight, we're doing a Spaces on,
Twitter?
at different times on Twitter. So if you look at follow our Twitter, follow Never Alone Advocacy, that's her nonprofit, or follow at Reade Alexandra, Reade Alexandra. And you'll see when I do spaces, which is like this little chat where people can ask questions and a little live feed. But so the book came out a year ago and got very suppressed. But if you want a holiday gift, it's out there, and I'm very happy about it. And at some point, I'm going to have an audio version of it.
Oh, I should recommend my producer, Robert. He has an audiobook company, so I'll hook you guys up after the show.
Good.
Okay. So, a lot. This is just kind of like casual, and what we do is we kind of discuss this and compare it with like what our press does, because a lot of the problems Lenin solved, we're still dealing with this again. So we kind of need to learn from the past as opposed to going this like haywire all the time. Anything happens.
Right.
So
cool. Okay. Well, I will begin reading then.
Yeah.
So Lenin, a replete bourgeois and a craving bourgeoisie. Le Temps, one of the most influential organs of the French conservative bourgeoisie, is waging a most desperate campaign against socialism. And it is a rare day on which one falls to see it in the columns that's the names of Marx, Bebel, Gasset, and Jouard.
Gasset and Jouard were French socialists.
I'm sorry?
I was just explaining to people. Gasset.
Yeah, there's a little bit of French. Accompanied by the most vicious comment and vituperation. Le Temps cannot speak of socialism without trembling with rage. The newspaper is following what well-intentioned Europeans call the Russian crisis with the utmost attention, and never fails to offer edifying counsel to La Nation Amie et Alliée, the friendly and allied nation, meaning. Thus, on the present occasion, too, it devotes its leading article to the recent Zemstrovo Congress, and it recalls the preceding July Congress and cannot refrain, even in retrospect, from expressing its dissatisfaction. It was, you see, a spectacle of utter incoherence of ideas and of complete incertitude of intention. The bullion scheme, as it was already known, but the delegates nevertheless confined themselves to a violent speeches, which, without being able to come to a decision on the question of boycott or participation, the organ of the French ruling bourgeoisie even reminds the Zemstrovo delegates with irritation that they had no mandates. On the contrary, what a smile of satisfaction has now come over the face of the bourgeois who is replete with political power. How graciously he hastens to shake the noble hand of his confrère, who is yet only craving for political power and who is already revealing his maturity. The boycott has been rejected, and now nothing more is being said about the absence of mandates. The decision of delegate, says Le Temps, does them credit. It shows that the political education of the most enlightened elements of the Russian people is progressing, and that they are abandoning these vague plans of political predigestion to enter boldly. I mispronounced that. Sorry. Predigitation. I can't say that. To enter boldly on the path of necessary evolution.
Okay, this is funny because the Zemstrovo were like these, like they're kind of like the state legislators, but they were advisory only. And the Zemstrovo wanted to boycott the Bulgarian Duma because it was a fake Duma. And what was the point of it? And so, I guess Russia had a czar who had absolute power, and France had a republic. And here he's talking about how the French bourgeois that actually has like power, it like looks down upon the Russian bourgeoisie. And and then like they're like, yeah, it's good that they don't have mandates yet because the Zemstrovo needs political education from us French people, kind of thing.
Right. Do you want me to read on?
Yeah.
Okay. The bourgeois is replete with political power and who has experience of what real victories of the people, the workers and peasants, lead to revolutions, has no hesitation in declaring the September Congress of the liberal landlords and merchants a victory of evolution over revolution. He praises the moderation of the Congress. He points with evident satisfaction to the rejective of the resolutions on parceling up the land and on the suffrage for women. The wisdom and moderation of these decisions clearly indicate that the opinions of the extreme parties did not prevail at this Congress. The program agreed on its sufficiently democratic to disarm the revolutionaries. Since the Demstrozo, Congress expects to put plans into effect solely by lawful means. Its program may also rally those reforming whom personal issues will not cut off from the rest of the Congress.
Okay. I just wanted to comment about how even today newspapers, like even CNN, I mean, they're always talking about they always praise the moderates, even though just like they rejected women's suffrage and whatever else. But it's like their function of these newspapers is to constantly, Joe Manchin type of moderate keeps getting praised. Gone.
Well, here, I'll let you read a little bit of it.
You want me to read it? Okay.
Yeah, just a little bit of it. Yeah.
The replete bourgeoisie slaps the craving bourgeoisie encouragingly on the shoulder to have an advanced program sufficient democratic to throw dust into the people's eyes and disarm the revolutionaries. And having taken the path of legality, that is, in plain, straightforward language, to have come to terms with the Trepovs and the Romanovs, that is true statesman-like wisdom, that the hopes in which the shrewd bourgeoisie places it in simple-minded revolutionaries are not quite groundless, as has been proved by our wiseacres of the new Iskra. They have dropped reins and dashed into a trap. They are eagerly proposing to exact democratic pledges from moderate bourgeoisie who are now prepared to heart and soul promise anything and pledge themselves to anything. It is not the only struggle between hostile parties, but even in the struggle within the socialist parties, as we found from the experience of the Second Congress, that all promises go by the board. Once the more or less substantial interests of the contending parties are involved. As the English saying goes, promises are like pie crusts, are leaving to be broken. I mean, what do you think? Like, does that... This seems like very similar to all election campaigns.
Yeah, he's just talking about how the ruling class is shaping the message so that that the working class think that they're doing something, and they're not. They're trying to shape the message so that it kind of invalidates or how do you? What's the word I'm looking for? But it pulls away the effort to change, to make systemic change.
Yep, that's exactly what he said. Okay. I like this. Your analysis is really good, so I'll continue to read. What Iskra's tactics with regards to the Duma boil down to the ideological and tactical disarmament of the revolutionaries. The wiseacres of the opportunist Iskra worked for this disarmament by denouncing the idea of an active boycott, substituting in fully the spirit of Novaya Vremya, which is new time, and almost in same terms, a passive boycott for an active, preaching confidence and trustfulness in the Milyukovs and the Stakoviches who embrace each other, and replacing the revolutionary slogan of insurrection with Osvobozdeniya's bourgeoisie twaddle, such as revolutionary self-government of citizens. Okay, I'll continue.
So basically, he's in the way I'm hearing it, he's saying that the bourgeois is like getting their frivolity, in other words, is is something that the working class are admire, and they're like kind of infusing that thought, kind of like here with capitalism, how we keep thinking if we do such and such, then we're going to have such and such, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to say that if you like they're like promising all these things, and there's no legal mechanism because it's just a fake Duma that the Tsar can dissolve at any time. And so and okay. And
it's
like
just they're almost like just talking to themselves. It's like speaking to the void.
That's how it feels like with like anything on media. Okay.
Yeah.
It is only the blind who can fail to see what a swamp Iskra has floundered into. In the illegal press, it is completely isolated, only with Osvobozdenia on its side. The Bund, even Martov and Axelrod will not suspect of any liking for the Voperiod arsenal, has come out resolutely for an active boycott. In the legal press, all the scoundrels and all the moderate liberals have united against the radical bourgeoisie, who have voiced sympathy with the boycott and are disposed towards the peasantry in a friendly way. Well, did Lenin tell any falsehoods when analyzing the new Iskra resolutions, when he said that in his two tactics, that the Iskra is ascending to the level of the liberal landlord, while proletary is endeavoring to raise the level of the revolutionary peasants?
Right. So the proletariats are trying to work to raise up the revolutionary voice, but the bourgeois is continuing to just throw crumbs while taking the whole pie.
Exactly. And I like it when he says, in the legal press, all the scoundrels and moderate liberals are united. Like, it's funny, like how much throughout time liberals are like, so it's almost like they think a moderation is like a virtue, right?
Right. Well, and I mean, in the Greek philosophy, it was like, I think it was Aristotle who said moderation in all things. But there's moderation, and then there's simply moderation is, I think, misused in this sense, in the political sense, in that the bourgeois' job is to keep a robust upper class and protect the ruling elite, so that the proletariats can't help the revolution. They can't make systemic change. So again, it's by preaching that moderation, or then you don't necessarily have this, like what you did have in Russia, where there was a revolution, or in France, where they actually just took arms and said, that's it. You guys are all out, everybody out of the pool, and we're starting over. Is it better? I don't know.
I mean, is it better in Russia before and after? No doubt about it. Like,
I mean, it was better. It was better after, but I'm saying now in our time.
Well, we're almost
not in Russia, but I'm talking about here.
No, well, like we're almost going through an apocalypse. So I don't know. With the climate change, I don't know how bad things can get.
I think to me, what's alarming is that the wealth disparity is like it's never been before like the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
And it's like that level of disparity of wealth, even more than before the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution.
And
I think it's worse, the wealth disparity right now.
Really disturbing thing, for example, Bill Gates is buying all this farmland. So with climate change, I mean, what happens if he controls all the food production and he also has the eugenics?
Whoever controls the food supply controls the world.
That's Henry Kissinger, right? Yeah. Anyways, yeah.
I don't like Henry Kissinger, but he was right about that.
Yeah, he was right about that.
Actually, I think the fight's not going to be about food necessarily. We'll always be able to have our independent small farms and whatnot somehow, some way. I think it's going to be over water, because you can't have farms without water. I think the big fight is going to be over clean water.
Oh, wow. Okay, let me continue.
Especially with climate change.
Yes, it scares me. We have mentioned Novaya Vremya, both that reptile of an organ. I'm going to start using this to refer to Washington Post. That reptile of an organ. I love that.
Yeah.
Novaya Vremya is New Times. So maybe it could apply to New York Times too, but I like that insult, reptile of an organ. Mm-hmm. And Moskovskaya Vedomosti are waging a desperate struggle against the idea of boycott and thereby revealing to all sundry the Duma's actual political significance. As a sample, here is a typical outburst by Novaya Vremya that which we shall dwell on more readily as it is shedding new light on the abysmal bourgeoisie vileness displayed by even such a respectable liberal organ such as Ruskiya Vedomosti. Mr. Yolos is a well-known Berlin correspondent, deals with the Jena Congress in number 247. That's the issue of the Novaya Vremya. To begin with, his Philistine soul rejoices at the fact that there has appeared such a kind-hearted and fair-minded liberal bourgeoisie, the wealthy Abe, who has made to the city of Jannah the gift of the people's house in which all parties, including even the Social Democrats, are free to mate. And Mr. Yolos draws the moral: one can benefit the people outside definite party bounds too. That, of course, is true. But what are we to say of a writer who, at times of desperate party struggle in Russia, indulges in praise of nonpartisanship? Does Mr. Yolos really understand that this piece is the piece of the worst political tactlessness, since he is thereby playing into the hands of Novaya Vremya? The true meaning of this Philistine delight in nonpartisanship will, however, become apparent to the reader as from the following statement by Mr. Yolos. Needless to say, there are political conditions under which it is useful for the time being to keep ultimate aims to oneself and to bear in mind immediate aims common to socialism and to liberalism. Bipartisanship, like nonpartisanship, the way Lenin meant, like, is bipartisanship now, and it's like always just like the worst things, right?
It doesn't get anything done. It just means you're at a stalemate.
Okay. That's
yeah.
Okay.
Like you're just stagnant. Mm-hmm. I mean, now, philosophically and I think policy wise. So
there's always that rotating villain, and notice how like with Democrats, like one rotating villain can derail anything, and in Republicans they got Gorsuch on with like less votes than
yeah.
Okay. I try whenever I start ranting about that, my blood pressure goes up. I just can't.
Yeah, it's okay. I have to wrap because I have to do another live feed soon, and I have to prep for it.
Okay, no worries. Let me just Now that is. Let me just finish this one paragraph, and then Now that is frank. Thank you, Mr. Yolos, for at least being explicit. It remains for us, when addressing the workers, to make use of such declaration at all times and on all occasions, to show up the bourgeoisie nature of Russian liberalism and to make clear to the workers the need for an independent proletariat party. One that is undeviatingly hostile to the bourgeoisie, even the most liberal. And you just suggested that earlier in the podcast.
We need a third party system, yeah.
Yep. Okay. What time do you have to go?
I should wrap it up.
Okay. Well, in that case, I'll finish reading. It's just a few more paragraphs, so I'll finish reading it for the audience. Okay. Thank you so much for coming. This was fun, and we should do it again. And I can't wait.
And I love listening to Lenin. He's amazing. It's kind of timeless, isn't it?
It's beautiful.
It is very timeless.
Yeah, we should like do some cross-show collaborations. So anyways, I will I will text you Robert's details, and maybe you can get an audiobook.
Oh, that'd be nice. And as far as the show, I really appreciate you having me on, and I love. It's a good reminder to look back at history so we finally can learn from it. And I hope we do. I hope we do. So I'm optimistic but pessimistic. What can I say?
I'm
the same
way. Yeah. Well, with that, привет.
Right. Привет.
Hi, I guess I'm back live. I decided to do a extremely easy mermaid hair. I mean, I guess I could show you how to do it. It's like really takes 5 minutes to do mermaid hair. I only learned because I have nieces who ask for it, like Elsa hair and mermaid hair and whatever other characters. Okay, so I don't actually remember where we left. Can you hear me? I don't exactly remember where we left off. So, did we go? Secondly, it does not. Where did we leave off? Janet? Where did we leave off?
I don't really remember.
I don't know where we left off.
Hold on one second.
First of all, this is libel on Bebel. A libel fully in the style of Novovremia. Oh, I know. I muted myself. Oopsie. Okay, where did we leave? Janet?
Hold on one second. Talk about something else for a second, and I'll get you where it was.
Okay, so I'm thirsty and I'm kind of feeling a little down in the dumps and a little exhausted and a little unmotivated. That's why I'm not coming on Twitter that much or doing that much TikTok. I feel like no matter what I do, nothing really happens, and I'm just getting a little exhausted. So that's the story. Really, I mean, I feel like we have a nice audience with Late Nights with Lenin, but it doesn't grow. People are not, I don't know. We're still heading towards apocalypse, climate change, the US government's still as evil as it always will be. And then you realize that, did they ever oppose the Nazis? No. There's just a lot to think about, I guess. Yeah. And I guess it's not good for my mood to do a piece about one Nazi a day with the victims of communism, but it has to be done. So that kind of really is not at all good for your mood when you have to. Oh, today it was the Ustazi. That was really bad for my mood, maybe. And I feel really lonely too, because it's I don't know, America, everyone's alienated. And you're not very close to each other. How many of you know your neighbors? Why not? How do we get to know our neighbors? It feels like there's a social barrier where you can't just go knock on their door and say, hey, I'm your neighbor. Let's become unalienated. And then I feel like there's no places to meet people even in New York City.
Okay, I think I couldn't really hear it very well, but I think that you left off. But all these tirades by our Democrat.
Oh, okay. But I am drinking water. But all these tirades by our Democrat are nothing compared with what is to come. Mr. Yolos does not confine himself to advising the proletariat to keep its ultimate aims to itself for the time being, i.e., renounce socialism. No. He also advises renouncing the idea of bringing the present revolution to its consummation. Mr. Yolo cites a speech by Bebel and plays up the passage in which Bebel expresses doubt as to whether we can succeed in transforming Russia into a civilized state so soon, while at the same time declaring that the old autocratic regime will never return. By the way, this is 1905. and the old Russia is no longer possible. Concerning this passage, Mr. Yolos writes the following: I do not consider Mr. Babel an authority on Russian affairs, but I must observe that in this part of his speech, he differs favorably from Kautsky and several doctrinaires who recommend revolution in permanence, an uninterrupted revolution. As a clever man and a politician who realizes what concrete forms a state of uninterrupted anarchy assumes in the life of a nation, Babel sees progress primarily in the promotion of cultural aims, and his words make it quite clear that he draws no line of demarcation and certainly erects no barriers between the Russian intelligentsia and the Russian proletariat at any rate, before the elementary rights of man have been secured. First of all, this is a libel on Babel, a libel fully in the style of Novaya Vremya. Babel always and unequivocally draws a line of demarcation between the bourgeoisie and the proletarian democratism. Mr. Yolos cannot be ignorant of that. Babel distinguishes in no uncertain fashion between the bourgeoisie intelligentsia and the social democratic intelligentsia. To assure the Russian reader that Babel, while fighting for culture, ever hushes up the mendacity and the treachery of the bourgeoisie democrat on one hand and the socialist aims of the working class on the other, means slandering in the grossest manner the leader of the revolutionary social democracy in Germany. Secondly, it does not at all follow from Babel's speech that he regards the Russian Revolution otherwise than Kautsky in 1905. Babel dies, by the way, before the Russian Revolution. The favorable difference in respect between Babel and Kautsky is a sheer fabrication by Mr. Yolos, who has extracted and distorted a single passage in Babel's speech while maintaining silence about Babel's numerous declarations fully in favor of the Russian Revolution and its decisive victory. Thirdly, and for us, this is the most interesting feature of the stand taken by Ruskiye Vedomosti, Mr. Yolos' outburst shows that he is afraid of a decisive victory of the revolution in Russia. Mr. Yolos says that uninterrupted revolution is uninterrupted anarchy. To say that means saying that a revolution is sedition. To say that means becoming a traitor to the revolution. Oh, and let not the Asvabazdenia diplomatists, who are so fond of asserting that they have no enemies on their left, try to tell us that this is the only accidental slip on the part of Ruskiye Vedomosti. That is not true. It is an expression of the most profound sentiments and deep-rooted interests of the liberal landlord and the liberal manufacturer. It is the same thing as the statement made by Mr. Vinogradov. Vinograd means wine, grapevines, by the way. Who is calling for a struggle to prevent the Russian Revolution from entering the path of 1789. It is the same servility of Mr. Trubetsky, who told the Tsar that he disapproved of sedition. This is no slip. It is sole truthful statements on the countless disgraceful deeds of our bourgeoisie democrat, who are wearied of uninterrupted anarchy, are beginning to long for law and order, and are even already tired of fighting. 1905. Even though they never really did any fighting, they already recoil from revolution at the mere sight of the workers and peasants actually rising for actual battle, eager to strike blows and not to receive them. The bourgeoisie Democrats are prepared to wink at the misdeeds of the Trepovs and the slaughter of the unarmed people. They're not afraid of that, but of anarchy of a quite different kind. When power is no longer to be wielded by Trepov or Petrukevich or Radichev, and the uprising of the peasants and the workers will be victorious, the bourgeoisie Democrats rally to the Duma idea so eagerly for that very reason, that they see in it an earnest of the betrayal of the revolution, an earnest of the prevention of the complete victory of the revolution, that terrible uninterrupted anarchy. Novaya Vremya provides evidence of the fact that our analysis of the liberal psychology is a faithful one. These dyed-in-the-wool lackeys of the Trepovs took immediate notice of Ruski Vedomosti's baseness and hastened to heartily embrace their confrères. It is precisely this lie of Mr. Yolo's about Bebel differing favorably from Kautsky that Novaya Vremya of September 13th, New Calendar, 26th Old Calendar, cites approvingly, remarking in its turn, thus, actually, no, I think I got it flipped, I don't know. Thus, our radical absentees will have to exclude Bebel too from the number of their allies. This is a perfectly legitimate conclusion. The professional Novaya Vremya traders have correctly appraised the sum and substance of the slip made by Ruskiya Vedomosti. Moreover, Novaya Vremya, that past master of politics, at once drew a conclusion with regard to the Duma. Although Mr. Yolos does not say a word about Bebel's view on the boycott, Novaya Vremya nonetheless labeled as absentees those in favor of the boycott. Novaya Vremya supplemented the libel against Bebel with a libel against the radicals, expressing, however, the absolutely correct opinion that the radical absentees' tactics are governed by the idea of a complete victory of the revolution, the idea of uninterrupted revolution, whereas the Duma liberals are prompted by fear of uninterrupted anarchy. Novaya Vremya is right. Trepov's lackeys were fully justified in catching Mr. Yolos in the act and telling him, if you do not want uninterrupted anarchy, then it follows that you are my ally, and no democratic bombast will dissuade me of this. Ours is a minor family quarrel against the doctrinaires and the supporters of the uninterrupted anarchy, however we shall be at one. Will Iskra fail to realize even now that in reproaching the boycott supporters with absenteeism, it was talking after the Novaya Vremya fashion? Can it fail to realize that this concurrence of its slogan with those of Novaya Vremya proves that there is something fundamentally false in its stand? The replete European bourgeoisie lauds the moderate of the Russian bourgeoisie, which is craving for power. Trepov's lackeys laud Mr. Yolos of Ruskiya Vedomosti for censuring the idea of uninterrupted anarchy, and the Novaya Vremya and the new Iskra gentry scoff at absenteeism. Okay, so I'm just going to get a little drink of water. By the way, this is like good for ADHD because it reminds me of each time. It stops after 7 p.m. In theory, you're supposed to stop drinking, but then make sure I get my 2 liters a day. Что делаем? Okay. I don't have the energy to partner with anyone, but if anyone wants to partner with me or hook me up, I'm willing to do it. But most people find me toxic because I am like, I'm not apologetic. I'll never say, oh my god, Stalin shouldn't have praised those people in 1936. So, c'est la vie. I forgot where was I? Here, I love having this nice book to read as opposed to screens. Oh, okay. I forgot where I was though. Can somebody remind me where I was? Okay, I was done with chapter 1. I know that. Maybe I was done with chapter 2 or no. Do you know where I was, Jenna?
Yeah, we did most of chapter 2. You could probably just start in chapter 3 because I think we got.
Okay. Okay, let's start with figuring out which page that chapter 2 begins with, or chapter 3. Okay. Table of contents is good. Okay. So we should start in Munich. Page 54. And I will read as long as I get some super chats or some sort of encouragement. Let's see. No, we got done with all of chapter 2. Okay. And now I can keep eye contact too if I read like this, like a but I won't. Although Munich, 1901-1902. Although Vladimir Ilyich Martov and Potrasov went abroad with legal passports, they decided in Munich to live under false passports. To keep away from the Russian colony in order not to compromise our associates arriving from Russia and the better to be able to send illegal literature to Russia in suitcases, letters, and so on. When I came to Munich, Vladimir Ilyich was living unregistered with this Rittmeyer under the name of Mayer. Although Rittmeyer had kept a beer house, he was a social democrat and sheltered Vladimir Ilyich in his flat. Vladimir Ilyich had a poor room and lived in a bachelor's style, having his meals at a German woman who kept him on a Mehlspeise diet. I don't know what that means. Mehlspeise. In the morning and in the evening, he drank tea out of a tin cup, which he carefully washed himself, and hung up on a nail by the sink. That's so adorable. I mean, back in the day, like some petty like somebody of Vladimir Ilyich status would not have done that. He looked very worried. Things were going slower than he wanted. Besides Vladimir Ilyich, there lived in Munich at the time Martov, Potrasov, and Vera Zasulich. Plekhanov and Axelrod wanted the paper to be published somewhere in Switzerland under their direct control. And at first Zasulich too, did not attach great significance to Iskra, and failed completely to appreciate the organizing role which it could and eventually did play. They were more interested in Zarya, Dawn. That Iskra of yours is silly, Vera Zasulich said at the beginning. Spoken in jest, it nevertheless betrayed a certain underestimation of the whole enterprise. Vladimir Ilyich thought Iskra ought to be kept apart from the political emigrant center and run on secret lines. This was vitally important as a means of facilitating contact with Russia and correspondence and the arrival of agents. These old men were inclined to construe this as unwillingness to have the paper transferred to Switzerland and unwillingness to accept their leadership, a desire to pursue an independent course of action. So they were in no particular hurry to help. Vladimir Ilyich sensed this and was worried about it. He had a soft spot for the emancipation of labor group and a great affection for both Axelrod and Vera Zasulich, and not to mention Plekhanov. "Wait till you see me, Zasulich," he told me the first evening. Wait till you see Zasulich, he told me the first evening when I arrived in Munich. "She is true to the core," and he was right. Vera Zasulich was the only one of the Emancipation of Labor group to identify herself closely with Iskra. She lived with us in Munich and London, and Iskra and its editorial board were all she had in their world. Their joys and sorrows were hers, and their tidings from Russia was the air she breathed. "Iskra is coming along, she said as an influence of the paper grew and extended. Vera Zasulich often spoke about the long, bleak years she had lived in emigration. We never experienced the kind of life in emigration that the Emancipation of Labor group had known. We were constantly and closely in touch with Russia and always had people from there coming to see us. We were better informed than if we had lived in some provincial town in Russia itself. We had no life outside of the interests of our Russian work. Things in Russia were on the upgrade. The working class movement was rising. The Emancipation of Labor group had been cut off from Russia, living abroad during the worst period of reaction when a student arriving from Russia had been an event. Travelers had been afraid to call on them. When Klassen and Korobko visited them at the beginning of the 90s, they were summoned to the police as soon as they returned and asked why they had gone to see Plekhanov. The police detection was very well organized. By the way, all the Ukraina files are in the Hoover Institute in California. And no coincidence, I bet you. Of all the Emancipation of Labor group, Vera Zasulich lived the loneliest life. Plekhanov, actually now Vera Zasulich makes me feel a little bit better. That's probably my life. Plekhanov and Axelrod both had families. Vera Zasulich often spoke about how lonely she felt. "I have no one," she would say, and then hastened to cover her feelings with a joke. "You love me, I know, but when I die, the most you'll do will be to drink 1 cup of tea less, perhaps." Her yearnings for a home and family was all the more poignant for having been brought up herself in a strange home as a ward. How lovingly she dandled Dimka's baby boy. Dimka was P.G. Smidovich's sister. She even displayed unsuspecting gifts for housewifery and did the shopping when it was her turn to cook dinner for the commune. Vera Martov-Alexiev ran a communal household in London. Few people would have suspected such domestic inclinations in her. However, she always lived in the nihilist style, dressed carelessly, smoked without a stop. Her room was shockingly untidy. It kind of sounds like my room. And never allowed anyone to do it. Her eating, too, was rather fantastic. I remember her stewing some meat on an oil stove and snipping off pieces of it with scissors and putting them in her mouth. "When I lived in England," she told me, "the English ladies tried to be sociable and asked, 'How long do you stew your meat?' 'It all depends,' I said. 'If you're hungry, 10 minutes will do, if not 3 hours or so.' That stopped them. When Vera had any writing to do, she would shut herself in her room and subsist on strong black coffee. She was terribly homesick, and in 1899 I believe she went to Russia illegally. Not to do any work, but just like that, to have a look at the musique and see what kind of nose he has. And when Iskra began to appear, she felt that this was a piece of real Russian work and clung to it desperately. For her to leave Iskra would have meant cutting herself off from Russia again and sinking back into the slough of the emigrant life. That is why when the question of editorship was brought up at the second conference, she was filled with indignation, for it was not a question of ambition, but a matter of life and death. In 1905, she went to Russia and stayed there. Vera Zasulich, for the first time in her life, opposed Plekhanov at the Second Congress. She had been associated with him by years of joint struggle. She saw what a tremendous role he played in having the revolutionary movement guided into the proper channel and appreciated him as the founder of the Russian social democracy. Appreciated his intellect, his brilliant talent. The disagreement with Plekhanov distressed her terribly, yet in this case she went against him. Plekhanov was a tragic fate. In the theoretical field, his service to the workers' movement are almost inestimable. Long years of life as a political emigrant, however, told on him. They isolated him from Russian realities. The broad mass movement of the workers started after he had gone abroad. He saw the representatives of different parties, writers, students, and even individual workers, but he had not seen the Russian working class mass. Had not worked with it. The Russian working class mass had not worked with it, nor felt it. Sometimes when the letters from Russia that lifted the veil over new forms of the movement revealed new vistas, Vladimir Ilyich Martov and even Vera Zasulich would read them over and over again. Vladimir Ilyich would then pace the room for a long time, not being able to fall asleep afterwards. I tried to show those letters to Plekhanov when we moved to Geneva, and was surprised at the way he reacted. He seemed staggered, looked incredulous, and never spoke about them again. Hold on. Oh my god, thank you so much, Shane. That was so sweet of you. Oh. Good day, mate. You're from Australia. Pure character riding a firework rocket disappearing away from the sky. Thank you. It was so sweet. Thank you, Shane. Yeah, I probably do have social relation bumps to smooth out, but I don't know if I can. Yeah, I should. I know. There are a lot. Anyways, not being on Twitter probably will help that. So I'm just being lazy and not being on. It's not that lazy. I'm just tired. I'm just whatever. Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know what to do. I mean, whatever. Her attitude towards Russia. Wait a minute. His attitude towards the letters from Russia became more skeptical than ever after the Second Congress. I felt hurt at this at first, and then I thought I began to see the reason. He had been away from Russia for such a long time that he had lost that capacity developed by experience which enables one to gauge the value of each letter and read between the lines. Workers from Russia often came to see Iskra, and all of them, of course, wanted to see Plekhanov. Seeing him was much more difficult than seeing us or Martov. Even when a worker did get to see him, he would come away feeling baffled. Plekhanov's brilliant intellect, knowledge, and wit would impress the worker, but all that the latter felt on leaving him would be a vast gulf between himself and that brilliant theoretician. The things that had been lain uppermost in his mind, the things that had been so eager to talk to him and ask advice about him, remained unuttered. If a worker differed with Plekhanov and tried to express his own opinion, Plekhanov would get angry and say, "Your daddies and mummies were knee-high when I dare say he was not like that at the beginning of his emigration, but at the turn of the century, he no longer had the live feel of Russia. He did not go to Russia in 1905. Axelrod was much more of an organizer than either Plekhanov or Zasulich. He saw much more of the new arrivals, who spent most of their time with him and had meals at his lodging, and he questioned them closely about everything. He carried on a correspondence in Russia and was well up in secrecy techniques. One can imagine how a Russian revolutionary organizer must have felt living for years in Switzerland as a political emigrant. Axelrod worked only at a quarter of his former capacity. He did not sleep for nights at a stretch, and writing was a tremendous strain on him. It took him months to finish an article he had started, and his handwriting was almost illegible owing to the nervous way he wrote. His handwriting always upset Vladimir Ilyich. "It's terrible to think of one reaching such a state as Axelrod," he would often say. He often spoke about Axelrod's handwriting. Thank you. Buy a mug, please. Axelrod's handwriting to Dr. Kramer, who attended Vladimir Ilyich's last illness. When Vladimir Ilyich first went abroad in 1895, he discussed organizational questions mostly with Axelrod. He told me a lot about him when I arrived in Munich. He asked me what Axelrod was now doing by pointing to his name in the newspaper when he himself could no longer write or speak a word. Axelrod reacted rather painfully to the fact that Iskra was not being published in Switzerland and that the flow of communications with Russia did not pass through him. That accounts for his bitter attitude on the question of an editorial trio at the Second Congress. Iskra to be the organizing center while he was removed from the editorial board. At this time, when the breadth of Russia made itself more strongly felt more than ever at the Second Congress. When I arrived in Munich, the only member of the Emancipation of Labor group living there was Vera Zasulich. She had a Bulgarian passport and lived under the name of Velika Dmitrievna. All the others had Bulgarian passports too. Until my arrival, Vladimir Ilyich had been living without any passport at all. When I came, we took a passport in the name of Dr. Yordanov, a Bulgarian, and his wife Marika, and a rented room we saw advertised in a working-class home. The secretary of Iskra before me had been Inna Smidovich Lenin. She too had a Bulgarian passport, and her party Sobrekui was Dimka. Vladimir Ilyich told me when I arrived that he had arranged for me to be the secretary of Iskra on my arrival. This, of course, meant that all the intercourse with Russia would be closely controlled by Vladimir Ilyich. Martov and Patrasov had nothing against this at this time, and the Emancipation of Labor group had put up no candidate of their own as they had not attached any particular importance to Iskra at the time. Vladimir Ilyich told me he had felt very awkward about doing this, but had thought it necessary in the interest of the cause. I had my hands full at once. Things were organized in this way. Letters from Russia were addressed to the German comrades in various towns in Germany and readdressed to Dr. Lehman, who then forwarded them on to us. Oh, that's like, oh, thank you so much for Fuzzcuz for the Canadian 100. Oh my God. Are you sure you don't want a mug? Okay, this is so sweet. Thank you. This really helps. I mean, I don't know how to engage in self-care. Well, Dee, I really don't know how to engage in self-care. What am I supposed to do? Like, I really don't know how to shut off or engage in self-care. So, yeah. I forgot where I was. Oh, okay. Okay. Martov and Patrusov had nothing against this at the time, and the Emancipation of Labor Group had put no candidate of their own, as they had not attached any particular importance to Iskra at that time. Vladimir Ilyich told me he felt very awkward about doing this, and had thought it necessary in the interest of the cause. I had my hands full at once. Things were getting organized this way. Letters from Russia were addressed. Oh, yeah, okay, sorry. Okay, that's actually a good method. Shortly before this, there had been quite a scare. Our comrades in Russia had succeeded at last in setting up a printing plant in Kishinev. The manager Akim, a brother of Lieber Leon Goldman, sent to Lehman's address by post a cushion with copies of pamphlets published in Russia sewn up in it. Lehman refused the delivery of the parcel, thinking it was a mistake. When our people got to know about it, it raised an alarm. He took the cushion from the post office and said that hence he would accept the delivery of everything that was addressed to him, even if it was a train load. We had no transport facilities for smuggling Iskra into Russia. We sent them mainly in double-bottom suitcases through various travelers who delivered them at secret addresses in Russia. One such rendezvous was the Lepeshinskys in Pskov, another in Kiev, and some other town. The comrades took the literature out of their suitcases and handed it to the organization. The shipment had only begun to be arranged through Let's, as in, I believe Let's is Latvia, Ralau, and Skubik. All this took up a lot of time. A good deal of time was also wasted on all kinds of negotiations, which led to nothing. I remember wasting a week negotiating with a fellow who planned on getting in touch with smugglers by traveling along the frontier with the camera, which he wanted to buy for us. What? When? Like, I think the last thing smugglers would want would be on camera. We corresponded with Iskra agents in Berlin, Paris, Switzerland, and Belgium. They had tried to help at best by raising money and find willing travelers and connections and so on. At any organization, the League of the Russian Revolutionary Social Democrats Abroad was formed out of the sympathies of the group in 1901. Okay, so I will find a pen somewhere, if I can. And mark this part so that we can... oh, thank you so much, Too Many. I don't do any more drugs, honestly. Like, I stopped doing weed Why did I stop doing weed? I forgot why I stopped doing weed. Maybe I had a bad trip. Whatever. I don't even drink that much alcohol. Give me one sec. Found a pen. Okay. Synthesis, the idea, edible chocolate edibles. Yeah, that's the weird thing. I can't find anything. Let's see. Actually, the one thing I do have a lot of fun in is Russian class. Learning Russian is really like the highlight of my day. But I will find something else that I found joy in. What's the date today? It's December 4th. Thank you so much, Ami. Shiba dog riding with a brush. Okay. Yeah, I'll try. Like, honestly, I used to have like a lot of joys in like things would make me joyful, and it just doesn't. Like so many things. Yeah, I don't know. We'll figure this. What's going on with me? Okay, and sounding anhedonic. I'm not anhedonic. I just don't know what's gonna. We'll figure this out. So maybe something will sound nice again, and we'll see. I mean, I'm not miserable. I am. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for. I'm sorry you lost your job mid-organize. That sucks. Yeah, it does under capitalism. Anyways, do check out historically.substack.com, because this month we are like taking down the tribute to liberty and their victims of communism. I mean, some of the names there are outrageous. So with that, we will say sunsets are always beautiful. Okay. With that, we will say Slobodu narodu I smrti fašizmu.